The most successful reclaiming of territory from organized crime happened on Pinheiro Machado Avenue with no street number. Do you know what's on Pinheiro Avenue? But people talk about Guanabara. Guanabara Palace. Just in the first half of the year, ICMS tax collection in Rio de Janeiro increased by 18%. It was the state in Brazil that recorded the highest growth in tax collection. Why? Because they started charging, or companies started paying taxes on fuel, among other corrective measures. So, what's happening in Rio de Janeiro when you took back that territory? Layoffs of employees. The system stopped, no? They were all ghost employees. So, you show that when territory is taken out of the hands of what I call crime, ghost employees are a crime. Protecting a tax evader is a crime. Colluding with corruption. Audits showing widespread corruption in the system. You removed it. The state is recovering. There are still other territories to be conquered. The main one, Lerge. Today we had a decision about the former president of the Legislative Assembly, Rodrigo Bacelar, who will face charges of obstruction of justice in a case where he is accused, along with the federal appellate judge, of hindering investigations to protect a congressman from the Red Command. We went from the federal police department in the favelas to the federal police department in the palaces. Organized crime was in the palaces. That's the challenge for Flávio Bolsonaro on the campaign trail. His challenge, which is governed, or at least was governed, by his party. So here we see a post from Valdemar da Costa. Valdemar da Costa, president of the PL.
Is it Valdemar Costa Neto?
That's right, it is. Valdemar da Costa Neto from the PL. Look at him here.
Now I just noticed the little picture.
On his official profile, in February, he says the following. Look, the stage for Flávio is set. We have União Brasil, whose candidate for senator is Rueda. We have Cláudio Castro, candidate for senator, governor, who will continue governing there, with Douglas Ruas, who will be president of the Rio de Janeiro State Legislative Assembly and will assume the governorship. And Rogério Lisboa is Douglas Ruas's running mate. Rogério Lisboa is the former mayor of Nova Iguaçu, a very important city.
Wait a minute, just one thing. This might...
It's Canela. Sorry. No. Canela, sorry. Candidate for senator, Canela.
Yes.
And Rogério Lisboa is Douglas Ruas' running mate. And Douglas Ruas is Flávio Bolsonaro's candidate. So you have União Brasil, you have PP, and you have PL. Just so you have an idea of how important what Trauman said is, Paz very much identified with the capital, and historically it's been difficult for the mayor of the capital to build a ring of support across the metropolitan region, which has major voting blocks. Douglas Ruas already has support in São Gonçalo, which is the second largest electorate, where his father is the mayor, a well-rated mayor in São Gonçalo. But the Baixada is a challenge. For the mayors of the capital, like César Maia and now Paz, Paz got a woman from Duque de Caxias as his running mate, who is the sister of Austin Reis, the most pro-Bolsonaro mayor in the Baixada. He put his sister there. But Valdemar fought back. You have Caxias, we have Nova Iguaçu, we have Belford Roxo, we have União Brasil and the PP. So that was the expectation. Let's see the reality months later, removed from the Senate by his own decision, but after an ankle monitor, an arrest, his son in trouble, a rifle in his car.
In his car.
Owner of more than 100 gas stations, a complication.
And just one other
Canelas.
deal. From Canelas with Flávio Bolsonaro, whose substitute was Rogéria Bolsonaro.
Yes, Flávio Bolsonaro's mother was his substitute. So he got an ankle monitor, but he already took it off. And União Brasil isn't supporting Flávio either, right? Yeah, they chose to stay neutral. Cláudio Castro also stepped away from the Senate for police-related reasons, right? He's being investigated in a series of corruption cases and one scandal after another in his administration. Talking to investigators and also members of Ricardo Couto's government, who is the judge currently leading the government by order of the Supreme Court, they did it. They are amazed at how widespread the corruption is. It wasn't something organized with a central command. It's widespread and deeply rooted. So Cláudio Castro is also out of the race due to federal police issues. And yesterday, the news, Rogério Lisboa, who was Douglas Ruas's running mate, announced support for País. So not only did he drop out as running mate, but yesterday he also announced his support for País. So País is securing Caxias, Nova Iguaçu, Meriti, Belfort Roxo, that whole belt there. Besides that, this week we got the news that Garotinho might become ineligible.
Again, he can become
Yeah.
eligible again.
Eligible again. He was before, then he stopped being
Because
eligible.
of conviction for misconduct involving the use of NGOs. We're going to explain it here quickly. Rosinha was the governor and he was the government secretary. There was a change there in the way NGOs were paid in the health department. And it was a discovery by the journalist Maya Menezes, who showed at O Globo, who showed that part of these NGOs actually had also some involvement in Garotinho's pre-campaign for president of the Republic. He was a pre-candidate for president. Yes, this was a complaint in which prosecutor Glaucia Santana took part, by the way. An excellent prosecutor, now an attorney. Yes, and this is a discussion that the Electoral Court will have. Is Garotinho eligible or not eligible? Well, the question is this. It's very difficult in the political world, in this scenario that is currently very favorable to Eduardo Paes. Would you take that risk? Support a candidate who may become ineligible later on, which is the case with Garotinho. So, regardless of the court's decision, there's this risk at the federal level. So, it's a week with support, Rogério support, and this decision and this doubt about whether Garotinho can take office or not in the event of a victory benefits a positive week for Paes and a difficult one for Flávio Bolsonaro, who couldn't build support in his own camp.
A lot.
There are examples of what Zema is going through in Minas. This is information from the investigation unit of the Regional Electoral Court, which is extremely important. And this is the initiative of President Cláudio Melo. Why? Let's explain. For a person to be considered guilty, a final and unappealable judgment is required. What is a final and unappealable judgment? Due to the slowness of our justice system, it's when Jupiter passes by Mars. As long as the moon is in Capricorn and there's an eclipse, then the person is considered convicted. In other words, this takes 20, 30, even 40 years. So, by popular initiative, society decided the following. Look, let's adopt a different criterion in the electoral courts. Instead of waiting for Mars to pass by Pluto with the moon in Scorpio, let's do the following. If someone is convicted on appeal, meaning by more than one judge, they can't run for office. All right? All right. Times have changed, right? So until you are investigated, you are charged, you are convicted in the first instance. All right? The criminals have already realized the following. Look, this is going to happen. Justice will catch up with me. I'll become a politician, right? To get special jurisdiction, etc. So there was a case in Niterói of a candidate suspected of killing an elected councilman. He was the substitute, suspected of killing the councilman who was about to take office. Well, by killing him, he would become the councilman and run for office again, right, in the next election. But he had already been committed for jury trial. What does that mean? Look, you're going to the jury trial. And the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office filed a lawsuit during the election period, right? The Electoral Public Prosecutor's Office filed a lawsuit and said, this guy can't be a candidate. Soon he'll be sitting in the dock to be tried for homicide. Like those that Pedro showed, some of them will be indicted, will become defendants, will stand trial. Some of them are even already on trial. So he wasn't covered by the clean record law. He didn't have any convictions, not even in the first instance, let alone in the second instance. But even so, the court revoked it, and it ended up in Brasília. In Brasília, Minister André Mendonça upheld the revocation even while acknowledging that this candidate, who was going to be tried for murder, did not fall under the clean record law. But André Mendonça said that this article of the law that Pedro Figueiredo mentioned, Law 9096 of 95, which prevents the candidacy of people or political parties involved with paramilitary organizations. So there is a law that is even stricter than the clean record law, and that's the new thing in this election. And that's what has to count, right? It has to count, of course. Keep in mind the overview, Pedro Figueiredo. Showed, everyone has the right to be presumed innocent, the presumption of innocence. But there's a greater good, which is democracy. You can't let a criminal run for office. The guy is suspected of being a criminal. So you weigh the presumption of innocence, which is an individual right. But there's also the right of the community to protect itself from ending up with a criminal in a political position, to get all the benefits, to make it easier to obstruct justice and so on. So these are the rights we are talking about. And there has already been a precedent in the Superior Electoral Court with the vote of Minister André Mendonça, which the full bench followed. Denying revoking the registration of a candidate who did not qualify under the clean record law.